like Frida Kahlo.
It was one of those art auctions that made headlines this week at Sotheby's here in New York. A self-portrait by artist Frida Kahlo sold for just under $35 million. Yep, that's it right there. It shows how the works of women can command incredible sums on the world market. But that hardly tells the whole story. Anthony Mason's back and joins us here in the studio with more. Anthony, good morning.
Good morning, Michelle. In fact, that sky-high sale belies the status of most women artists now and throughout history. They've traditionally toiled in relative obscurity compared to their male counterparts, something many are hoping will soon change.
So these paintings were stained.
In her early days as a painter, the pioneering artist Audrey Flack was afraid to use her first name.
Here's Flack.
54. This is
Yep.
1954?
Yeah. And there's A. Flack.
A. Flack.
It took a while for me to do Audrey.
Why?
You didn't want to be judged as a woman artist.
How would you be judged?
Lesser. Less important.
Flack's work evolved from abstraction to photorealism in the 60s.
Which was radical at the time.
Radical.
But like most women artists, Flack, who's now 90, has struggled to get as much attention as her male colleagues.
Why did the women get left out of the story?
They've always been left out of the story.
$2 million is called gentleman's bid.
In the art world, the story is often written in the global auction markets, where between 2008 and 2019, the works of Pablo Picasso alone sold for more money than all female artists combined. And if you thought women were making progress in museums, well, over the past decade, only 11% of acquisitions and just 14% of exhibitions were of work by women artists.
They are still greatly undervalued in the art market, in museums, including the MFA.
Noni Gadsden is a curator at the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston.
I thought, it has to have been better in recent years.
But it's not.
No. And I was shocked. I found the number that there was 3,800 works of art by women came into the MFA collection in the last 10 years. I thought, that's pretty good. Until I realized it was less than 5% of all of our acquisitions.
How do you feel about that?
Oh, horrified. Completely horrified and dismayed and energized that this has to be a mission.
In an exhibition running through next weekend at the Museum of Fine Arts, the MFA has dedicated an entire floor to female artists.
How many artists are represented?
Nearly 100.
Women Take the Floor features accomplished artists who've been given little attention, like Meta Warwick Fuller.
She was the first African-American woman artist to get a government commission as a sculptor in 1907.
And Lauren McIver.
Why have we not heard about her? The Whitney did a show about her in '53.
Yeah, but she's disappeared.
Again, she may have had attention during her day.
Yeah.
But somehow in the history books, she falls away.
In 1958, Life magazine called Grace Hardigan the most celebrated of the young women painters.
Really, she began painting in 1948, and by 1953, she was an absolute star. She was in the Museum of Modern Art.
Mary Gabriel, author of the best-selling book 9th Street Women, about female artists of the 50s, says they were ultimately eclipsed by male stars like Willem de Kooning and Jackson Pollock.
Collectors thought only men could be great painters, were painters or sculptors worth investing in.
So that's all the dealers wanted?
So that's all the dealers sold. And eventually, by the late 50s, it was a man's story.
In the 60s, the pop movement created American art's first megastars, Andy Warhol and Roy Lichtenstein.
Is there a female pop artist?
I'm sure there is. I can't name it right now.
That says a lot.
Yes, it does.
But in 2019, an exhibit at New York's Guggenheim Museum showed that even an obscure woman artist could be a big draw when record crowds flocked to see the stunning work of Hilma af Klint.
Hilma af Klint is a Swedish artist that was working in the early decades of the 20th century in Stockholm.
Tracy Bashkoff, senior curator at the Guggenheim, says Klint's epic paintings pioneered abstraction. The inventor of abstract art was thought to be Wassily Kandinsky around 1910, but Hilma af Klint's work preceded his.
But they were actually painted when?
In 1907.
1907?
Yeah, 1907. I mean, nothing like it from the time period.
Does this suggest we need to re-examine art history?
Yeah, it does, yes.
H.W. Jansen's History of Art, which first came out in 1962, was long the Bible, the preferred textbook.
When it was originally published, there were no women in Jansen.
No women. No women in any art history book.
In 1980, Audrey Flack says she had an unexpected encounter with the author's son and argued that American painter Mary Cassatt should be included.
And he put her in.
Yeah.
And he put me in, which was kind of nice. First women.
How did that feel?
Felt great.
In the 80s, Flack began exploring sculpture, and as she showed me in her studio in East Hampton, New York, later chose to portray strong women like Eve.
She's a very heroic woman and sexy.
And Daphne, the wood nymph of Greek mythology.
So I decided to make her hair tree roots, which I gathered from East Hampton storms.
Do you feel seen more now as an artist?
I'm getting letters from former students and from artists, mainly women, of how much my work has meant to them. And I'm like, wow, how did this happen? It's very gratifying.
But she's still waiting for a career retrospective show in New York.
I'm 90.
Yeah.
How much longer do I have to go? You know, it's like that much.
Whose job is it to turn some of these women into brand names?
All of ours?
With exhibitions like Women Take the Floor at the Museum of Fine Arts, curator Noni Gadsden says the imbalance in art is only just beginning to be righted.
What are we missing when we leave women out?
50% of the story.
And there it is.
Yeah.
That exhibition, Women Take the Floor, runs through next weekend, next Sunday in Boston. If you're in the area and you get a chance, go see it. It's terrific. I have to say, I was inspired to follow this story by Mary Gabriel's book, 9th Street Women.
Yeah.
If you get a chance, it's a 600-page book. It's a brick. But I could not put this thing down because you discover that really the art movement in America, when America really came to prominence, there were so many women involved in making that happen.
How do you flip this?
You know, it's happening now in a lot of places. The Whitney Museum here in New York right now has an amazing exhibit of a young black woman, Jennifer Packer, which I just stumbled on and blew my mind. Museums are trying, but you've got centuries of imbalance to correct here. And the story is only starting to be written.
Some of it was that, I was going to say, that when you talk about the books on art that have been written, you do have to go back and start looking at it. It was men that were taking this and compiling the information. Right. That's how you get some of that change.
And Audrey Flack is 90.
I know.
The most amazing, that's what 90, I hope 90 looks like for me.
Yeah.
Sharp as a tack, still creating like crazy, amazing woman.
And a great steward for her profession.
Yes, exactly. And she's seen it all. She is, I mean, she's got stories. She literally got hit on by Jackson Pollock.
Yes.
She got amazing stories, but most of all, an incredibly talented artist.
And the beard came back.
Yes. That was the flashback.
Flashback to the Anthony Mason beard.
Stages of Anthony.